Okay, Maureen, just so you know, it's being recorded and you're unmuted now, so, okay? Or it's unmuted now.
Let me know when you got the cameras on.
The camera's on you. Smile nice. There we go. All right.
Now, Colby and him, they can't talk. And supervisor.
They can activate their microphones.
Oh,
They can activate their microphone, or Mike might have to, he's got.
Great, thank you. And then when I'm done, I just pull the plug.
There's a button at the bottom that says end meeting.
I can unmute for all.
Yes, you can. Yes. I'm gonna get out of your way. Yeah, okay. You're gonna do the tour?
Yeah.
No, then.
Another 8 in the morning.
Yay. Yep. Do you? Oh, geez.
I'm okay. I will do more aids. I mean, I do a lot of substitute teaching for Kimberly.
Oh,
I have to
okay.
be there.
Yeah, if you're not a morning, that's good.
Why did I pick this district?
No, that just turns on the camera and shuts it off at the end of the meeting. So you just aim it and then hit it. You have to hit it and then shut it. So, Dave, are you going on the tour? I'll get out of the way. You're welcome.
I just had a 4-shot espresso, so I think I'm just. I was on the phone with my sister on the way here. and she says, "Give me
Yeah, for speeding. They hit winning kind of, so they should be here.
I think you again for that. It was really, really helpful for you to sit down with me.
Thank you, Sue.
Thank you. I'm missing a couple people. Are they coming or?
We're the three.
Oh, that's right, because he comes from.
8:03. The Personnel Finance Committee will now be in session for May 5th. And we're going to start with approval of our agenda, which we want to move the discussion, which is item 3, down to about item below item 10. Okay. By doing so, we're waiting for Don to come to the meeting, but he will be late. We know that he's going to be about 15 to 20 minutes late. So we're going to move item 3 all the way down to below item 10, between item 10 and item 11. And I need a motion to make that.
I move to approve to move number 3 to below number 10 in the agenda.
There's a second. Okay. So now we need a motion to approve the agenda as it's read. Okay. Second. Thank you. All right. We have item 1 is the public comments. Do we have anybody in the audience with public comments with regard to the items on the agenda? Anybody in Zoom with public comments? We have nobody in Zoom. We have being Zoomed. We have nobody in Zoom that has public comments. So we'll close the public comments. Do we have a motion? Motion to close the public comments.
But we don't need one. It's just, you just ask if there's public comments.
Closing the public comments. We want to approve minutes, but we have nobody here that would be part of the quorum to approve, or the full quorum to approve the minutes from April 7th. So we're going to move the minutes from April 7th along with these minutes into.
So when do we, I have a question, when do we approve those minutes? I don't know.
Okay, the minutes will be approved in the June meeting because we have to have Steve here for the three of us to.
All right, I'm sorry. I forgot about Steve.
Can you do it in the, a main meeting and just bring it up for the agenda? An all board meeting?
No, that's what we're going to do in June. We'll have a board meeting in June for all the minutes at this point, all right?
But I don't mean the PNF meeting. I mean,
No.
just an overall board meeting. You can approve minutes if you take it in the agenda just for the people who are in the PNF committee. I was just thinking if you wanted to move it along a little faster.
We can,
I was just curious if you want, I mean, because that way he doesn't have to come all the way here to approve the minutes. I'm assuming this is a person that's not on the committee.
no,
He's on the committee.
he's on the committee, he's just not here, he's absent.
Oh, Steve Bender. Okay,
Steve Bender.
okay, sorry.
So Steve Bender will be at our June meeting when we meet in the June meeting, and we'll decide that later.
I wonder if he's the turkey hunter. I must have my turkey hunting season today.
Okay, so we're going to move on to item number 3, discussion and approval of. We've moved on beyond item 3. We're moving to item 4, which is the budget transfer for $54,091 to cover the shortfall in revenue and overage expense for the highway capital improvement project on Y.
Second,
You want to say something about,
If there was any questions.
do we have any questions at all? Okay. So it's been moved that the transfer of $54,000 $54,094 or $91 to cover the shortfall in revenue and overage expense to 2021 capital improvement project on County Trunk Y. Be accepted. Resolution, item 5, resolution to approve the budget transfer of $238,370 in additional funding to the sheriff's boathouse repair. You have a motion, or would you like to explain?
Sure. Yes, I would, because it's a lot of money. And I understand that when we look at a engine motor house and the cost. So we only received one bid in February of 2022, and because of the cost of materials, labor, shortages in the supply chain, there's a significant increase to the total cost of the project. We did go out and look at, is there any other possibility for us at having a boathouse that we can secure our boat in, so that during non-use times, there's very sensitive equipment that's on there, there's radar on top, side sonar, there's very, very sensitive and expensive equipment. And there are no covered type boathouses that are on the other side of the railroad bridge. So that railroad bridge is just to our west of the boathouse. And when that is closed, if we're on the other side, or if that is, closed, where the train is going through, we're on the other side, we can't get through. And now we're waiting, and anytime there's a rescue going on, That is a substantial time that we're adding. So we need it on the other side. There is nothing there. There's a DNR, abandoned DNR boathouse that's there, but it is in same disrepair, and it's actually set back more and would need to be dredged out at least this year, and possibly, if that were our solution, would need to continue to be dredged out as well, because the sediment just flows in there. So there aren't a lot of options for us, except for this particular boathouse, and I understand the expense that is associated with it.
So is this, I mean, obviously the prices are a lot more. We only got one bid. I mean, is it possible to put this on hold for at least another year and see if prices come down? I mean, because we are probably close to the peak or maybe a little bit more. I mean, I understand it's in pretty disrepair. I get that. But is that possible to just kind of delay it maybe at least to see if something happens a little bit?
So what we've done, we have a Marine One, which was actually at the board meeting.
Right.
Tim talked about Marine One. It's our main rescue boat for Lake Winnebago. Right now, we have a new Marine unit that came online last year, new Marine One. And it's still in the break-in phase. We still have our old one. What we're doing right now is we have a slip Pioneer that we're keeping the old Marine One there. It's kind of stripped down a little bit as far as the equipment is concerned.
Hi,
We have to
I'm
move
pretty
it
sure
to,
they're at PNF.
we have to move it to the other boat.
Well, Todd was going, he's got paperwork. I'm listening to John talk because John wasn't supposed to be there and now John's there, so.
Caller, can you please mute yourself?
We moved that equipment. So we did rent a space on the other side. Could we get through this year? Yes, we could. I mean, is it the best case scenario? Here's one of the other issues we have. When we recover bodies, and that happens, it's unfortunate, but we have fatalities, drownings that occur on Lake Winnebago. We put that body inside the boat, we get inside our boat house and we take care of it with the corner there. So it's not in the open, because it draws attention. And many times the condition of the bodies are not favorable. So can we? Yes. Is it ideal? No. And I don't know, I mean, nobody can see the future, how long this supply chain issue and high construction costs are going to be. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and I get that. I mean, I don't have a crystal ball either. I get that. I just, you know, with the interest rates now, I mean, they went up yesterday another 0.5 point. I mean, we're looking at a lot of more unfavorable times right at this moment. And I mean, I would like to at least wait. I mean, and I understand that you need this, and that's not what I'm debating.
Sure.
I would favor more just at least a year. Just I feel like this is like the absolute worst time to do this, but I'll let other people talk to see if somebody else has an idea or what, you know. I mean, the dredging, I mean, could that work? You said that could work for a brief period of time on the other side of the bridge.
Yeah, the disrepair of that boathouse though puts us in the same, we would have to do significant repairs to it, and we'd have to purchase it. So and we don't even own it. It just belongs to the DNR.
Would they let us lease it and, you know, for a small price to dredge it out?
I would rather continue with what we're doing with the open slip of the Pioneer rather than try to even, the permitting process to dredge is probably longer than what we'd be waiting for.
But wouldn't the DNR be more favorable? Sorry, that was bad.
No,
Because it's their slip.
Yeah, no, they've been part of our permitting process for this and have been very helpful. We take care of a lot of issues for them on the waterway, so they've been helpful. So again, to answer your question, if I think, could we wait some till the end of the boating season with the Pioneer slip that we have? Yes, but I would be.
It's something that would have to be done next year.
Yeah, I'd be back here probably this time or earlier next year to begin that process, to get it ready for the next year.
Does that boat rest in the water or stay in the water, or is it on the lift?
Sounds like.
So then what do you do in an emergency when the tornado comes through and takes electricity all? How do you get it done?
There's a manual way to
Okay.
release them.
Just so the length of time that you'd be pushing this thing out is for, something like next summer. I doubt seriously that the Fed is gonna move the interest rates back after moving them forward. So the money dollars are going to remain tough to handle at a later time.
I'm more concerned about inflation. I mean, because of supply and demand, so it's.
So I'm gonna need a motion.
I move to approve.
Second,
I'm gonna vote no, but I don't want to talk to them.
go right ahead.
Is there a second? Should we?
There should be a second before we continue the discussion. Discussing this.
Discussing it, I'll second it.
Go ahead.
Okay, I've never voted against anything wanted. But I came real close the first time. On this. Yeah, with the increase. I just can't. vote. There's just. The inflation. People are gonna start losing their houses. They're not gonna be able to pay their mortgage, they're not gonna be able to pay their taxes. I just can't do it, sorry. I think it'll be back to us someday when we lose a family out there from fall weather and the sheriff's office or somebody can't get to them. But they can get there quicker if they trailer it to somewhere else.
If I could, when we trailer our boat, you have to understand that we bring a patrolman off the road, they grab the pickup truck, and then they have to launch the boat. This is a 26-foot boat. So if you know anything about boating, that is not an easy boat to launch. It doesn't happen like a skip that you're just rolling off. So it's about 40 minutes. If we have a patrolman coming an emergency status to the boathouse, and we're able to just drop the boat in the water back out, and we're there. I understand what you're saying, and I understand what everybody's saying about the cost. I just, this has been a 1970, since 1970, that we've had this boathouse in play and has been used on numerous occasions to save lives. And I know it's a lot of money, and if we're gonna wait, okay, but we're gonna be coming, I just want the committee to understand that we'll be back at this time next year asking for the same thing. This is the most ideal situation to save lives for us.
I would be in favor of you coming back again next year. I'm sorry. And also, it's not that I don't agree with this. I want to, the inflation rates is what's really, I know that it will come down soon or then probably later, hopefully. But yeah, unfortunately, I would be more in favor of waiting, delaying a year, but.
I understand.
I'd rather use this money towards getting a new boat too.
I'm sorry.
Never mind. I won't say that out loud.
Your judiciary approved, your judiciary committee approved the 465, 536 for the repair project. But now you're back asking for another 238 and $370 to add to it because it wasn't enough.
They approved I think it's 322, 846, and that went all the way through the board. And then the bid response came back February of 2022 to the 561. So it's not, the total is the 561 now. So it went from the 322 to the 561 from the bid process.
Any way of getting ARPA funds?
No.
Any additional, anything? No?
Well,
Doesn't qualify.
except that under the shared revenue loss provisions of ARPA, I've done an analysis of that recently. And I believe that we'll be able to use the whole 33 million as revenue replacement, which means the board will have great discretion to use.
That's encouraging.
It is. Okay.
Will we know that?
I'm prepared to bring those options to the ARPA commission. They have to go through the ARPA commission that we're setting up. But the final rule just came out in early April. It was very different from the preliminary final rule and liberalized or expanded the scope of lost revenue that we can claim. I've done the math 3 times. I've discussed it with our auditor, who's very familiar, and I think there's a path toward getting the whole 33 million essentially free and clear. If we jump through a few hoops to spend when and how we want. I mean, we have to first report it as replacing expenditures that we're going to make anyway.
So something like this would have to be approved ahead of time before they went to the ARPA funding, if that.
It would have to be
You have to have
approved.
it as an expense. It doesn't have to be approved. It just has to be.
It has to be specifically allocated as a use of the ARPA money by the full board at some stage before we can claim that. But then once we could actually allocate it to existing expenses that the county has. We could take the whole sheriff's budget and say we're using ARPA money for that, freeing up that money, using $1 for another, and end up with the full 33 million in the bank that way if we go through that process. And it doesn't have to be, the timing then becomes unimportant. It won't be, we can replace spending that we've already made. We can set money aside for the future.
And the commission just being developed. It hasn't been qualified yet, so.
Commission was
We're talking a couple months
appointed
away.
probably at the March meeting, I believe, because we're waiting for the new board to appoint the members of the commission, since 5 of the 9 will be board members.
The executive's got his hand raised.
Watching.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, may I be recognized?
Mr. Donald, go ahead.
All right, I understand all the concerns that are being raised in this discussion. I think it's a very good discussion to have, but I do want to remind everybody of another option. We do have a healthy fund balance. We would not be required to bond for to bond for this. And that's all decision that we'll make around during budget time, what we bond for and what we don't bond for. So even though I fully understands everyone's concerns, we would not have to bond for this, and interest rates may not even come into play. That being said, I do think, as Supervisor Albrecht said, it's hard to put a price on a family's life. And if somebody we've already been 2 years now where we don't have as rapid a response for a lake rescue as we should. And this is something that I would encourage you all to consider and to keep in mind, that we do have a healthy fund balance in our general fund, that we would not have to bond for this. That's all.
Thank you. I'm gonna put it to a vote. Got a second on it? And
Can I say one more thing?
yes,
There is a good chance, that the boat on the trailer will get there to the spot. Plus we have other boats.
my immediate thought to that is where it is now relative to where the boathouse is. It's right now, you're housing it over at Pioneer. How difficult is it to get to the Pioneer and make the move from there?
But it's not secured. It is an open slip that we're
I
in there,
understand.
so we had to reduce some of the sensitive equipment, and it's the old boat. And again, we get back to I can speak from experience that we will have drownings and issues on our lake, and we're going to bring bodies back that is the spot where we can do that, and we can do that with dignity to the deceased and to the family. And like I said, oftentimes they've been in the water for a while. It's difficult. So we don't have that opportunity to do that now because we're in an open split. So the response time right now, we're the same, but it's an open split and some degraded equipment on the old boat. So I understand if you want to wait a year, but please understand that we're going to come back and try to make the situation right. We've been doing it since 1970. It's proven. And
What's that going to, excuse me, but what's that going to do to the expense a year from now? And the degradation of the boat, and the degradation of that boathouse in the interim.
yeah, the boathouse is really to the point you can see from the photos. It's pilings are caving in, and you know, whether or not I would not put our new boat in there, I would not jeopardize our new boat, the older one. And I don't even think I would use that one. We're going to stick with the slip because it's just unsafe.
Let's one last word, that's it. Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead, board.
We're gonna vote. All in favor?
I,
Aye. Nay. Okay,
I think there's other options we should look at.
well,
It's just happening for
resolution has been approved. Transfer of $238,370 for the funding of the sheriff's boathouse. 3-1. Okay, we're on item 6. Item 6 is a resolution to the budget, approval of the budget transfer of $104,638 from the jail improvements fund to replace the carpet in the supervisor pod 1 and 2 and the C pod with vinyl flooring.
So these are our direct supervision pods. This is where we'll have as many as 68 inmates that are monitored by one deputy that is at the in the pod with them. The pods right now are empty due to our low census. C pod, we have used that in the very recent past, but we've been able to reduce the number, and it's kind of, it fluctuates. Sometimes we use it, sometimes we don't. The building in 2003, there was carpeting that was put in there, and it is in very rough shape, along with the tile floor is worn. It has been part of our jail inspector's report for replacement during the last recent years of jail inspection. This money will come out of the jail improvement fund. Balance is $217,653 today. So that that $104,638 will come out of that fund. So it's not direct levy dollars or general fund dollars. And that's what this is specifically. The jail improvement fund comes from assessments that the state gives to counties based on criteria. So this gets rejuvenated yearly, and sometimes we let it build up a little bit so we can do major projects. We do take out of it on a yearly basis, like uniforms and towels and those types of things for the day-to-day operations. But this one would take care of.
second.
We've got a motion and a second to replace the Direct. Of the budget transfer of 104,638. Direct supervisor pod and pod 2 and 3 pod, the final floor passes.
We didn't vote. You can say all in favor.
We had no discussion.
We had a first and a second.
Have a vote quick.
Can I just make a comment? This I like because it's a fund that you guys have built up and it's a no-brainer to me. So that's, thank you.
Make a motion to
We already did that.
Yeah, second.
All in favor?
You opposing?
No. Aye.
4-0.
4-0.
Thank you.
I think Mike Ventures in there also.
No, Mike Norton.
Oh, is it? Oh.
Supervisor Skillinger is also.
We're on item 7 now. Resolution amending the table of organization for the county sheriff's office by adding the lieutenant position, removing one corrections financial associate position and one police officer. And that's is going to be $56,665 in one position.
So we have some retirements. One just occurred. We had done with us over 32 years. We took some of her duties and alcohol program is moving to Connect, which is the version of our. We have had 24/7 alcohol.
I keep hitting mute and then it's mute for a few seconds.
Maybe Supervisor Norton, can you please mute?
So the 24/7 alcohol program has been with our agency since 2011. What it does is takes alcohol related offenses. We started it with drunk driving and we moved it to a bunch of other offenses. And from the time they have their first initial appearance till the time of their trial date, they are on a program where they need to remain sober. We also have a drug program that's already been moved to the Connect program. The alcohol program is moving to the Connect program. The person that just retired, one of the main duties was that program and the financial piece of that. We have today probably 124, 125 individuals on that program. So it's pretty robust and it's been very successful. And I know that Connect is going to continue to fare well with that program. And then we're also our crime prevention officer / DARE deputy is retiring. So we're going to take those two positions and we're going to create a lieutenant's position in the jail on our PM shift. There is a lot of liability that exists in our jail. Inmates tend to get involved in litigation often. I get sued on a very regular basis. You can ask corporation counsel, but it's most of them are frivolous. However, having administrative staff present helps mitigate that possibility or that liability. It's a net savings between the two of 56,000. So we're reducing the table of organization by 2, increasing or adding 1. We are still going to provide their services to our schools that are in the rural areas by utilizing that deputy that's retired. He's only going to be a reserve deputy, and they'll take care of that, but that's all legal. At a very much lower cost. These all.
We need a motion before we start the
So moved.
discussion. A second. Any discussion? Any discussion from the board?
You did talk about the retired person that's going to be a liaison at the can never say that word. Out in the middle of nowhere schools, right?
Yes.
So, which is, are you guys involved in is that someone that's going to be with where the new Nina High School is? Is that?
There is a Nina grade school town of Clayton. Yes, and then Oakwood, Lakeside.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes
Yeah.
sense. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? No, from the committee? None? Okay. We have a motion on the floor. Do we? We have a motion.
Second.
We had a second. We're gonna have a vote now. All right. All those in favor?
I
Aye. All those not in favor? There are no, there's nobody here. Okay. We're on to, thank you, Sheriff Miles. We're on to item number 8. And I believe that's Adam Brisk. Want to give a short. Just a short little bit about the dog park and the donation.
Yeah, so a few times a year we receive donations from memorial benches, not just at the dog park, but at our whole park system along the Wash Trail, Student Trail, community parks, some of our more popular areas. What we do is we charge the donor for the cost of the bench, the cost of shipping the bench, and staff installs it. So really it ends up being, other than the staff installing the bench, it ends up being pretty much net zero budget transfer. So what we're looking for today is a budget adjustment to reflect the increased cost of $1,841 and then the increased revenue that we would be receiving for $1,841. Yeah, that's.
Can we have a motion for it? Motion to
move to approve.
transfer the budget.
Second.
Hold on a second. Motion to transfer the $1,841 to cover the donation of the memorial bench at Jerry Finch Winnebago Dog Park. Dog Park. Do we have a second?
Yeah, it was first.
Hold on a second.
Do we want to vote immediately? Everybody in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. 4-0. Second is your second one is a resolution approving the contract with Midwest Rental Company to offer the kayak rentals at the Salem Bay boat landing. You want to give us a little bit of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So as of this January of this year, one of our staff members had a position change, and he is now our Justin Jagger. He's our program and marketing coordinator. And one of the goals of that position and the department is to increase activity within our park systems across the board. So one of the thought processes that we've been working with Midwest Rental Company is trying out, so basically trial program with 7 boat lanes. And we've been looking to work with Midwest Rental Company out of Oshkosh to provide kayak rentals out of the Salem Bay boat launch. The only obligation from the county, which would be taken through our operation budget, is an $800 investment for the raft itself. It's a 4 kayak raft that we put up to 4 kayaks. We like to try this out with Midwest Rentals. Honestly, honestly, I know we're asking this for this year. I think to get a true look at how this program's gonna work, I think ultimately we'll either look at something for next year too and go through it for next year. We're already starting late this year. But the county would receive 15% of all rental fees. And if this program, let's just say after next year, if this program would not work out, that the goal was, so the county would own that rack, and the goal would be similar to other communities. Known as a good example, City of Winona and Madison area. And actually, right in our backyard, Oshkosh, they rent out those as flips. So if this doesn't work out with rentals, then we would just repurpose that rack, and we would use it so people could store their kayaks at one of our boat launches, and we'd create revenue for that. So we think it's a good opportunity to try to provide a program for maybe residents that can't afford to purchase a kayak and will want to try it out before they will purchase a kayak, and partnering with a local company to do so.
So we,
We're gonna state it as a motion, a full motion, okay? So, would somebody like to make the motion on the
So
approval of the contract for Midwest Rental Company to offer the kayak rental?
So
A second?
Second.
Mr. Nussbaum.
Nussbaum, a second. Okay.
We have a vote. We have discussion. We have a discussion on it. We'll have a vote.
I have nothing to say. I have nothing to say.
Okay. We'll have a vote. All for?
Aye.
Anybody against? No. We have 4-0, 4-0. Only question I had, and I understand that Mary Ann has already seen that contract. The third item that you have is authorizing capital project to the Parks Fund for the LED lighting, the blacktop and gutter improvements of the Sunny View Equine Complex at a cost of $127,000. And by the way, I believe it was in the CIP, which is $165,000. You know, I'll explain it.
I address that, that'd be great. Actually, I did have a note down because I know Supervisor Eisen brought it up at the board meeting, so I wanted to share that. I spoke with Director Collard about that. So last year when we initially submitted our capital improvement budgets, the initial submittal was $165 with the previous finance director. Before the previous finance director left to take another job last fall, we did update that to $190,000. And speaking with Director Collard, in your in the table, I brought in the table, basically, in the capital improvement table that has like the list of all the projects, it's listed as 190,000 there. In the individual projects listing, it was listed still as 165, so it got changed in one, but not. So it should be the 190,000 is what was budgeted for. As I did mention though at the board meeting and during my presentation, since we even created that 190,000, the issue with the installation came up as we've been talking with painters. And so that request is not in here today, but I wanted to be transparent that in the fall or later this summer, we'll be coming back with that piece of the project.
For the painting, for the painting.
Because as you recall from the presentation, the painter mentioned the sandblast and the condition of that insulation being so close to the metal, there may be damage to the installation. So we'll probably, there's already damage to much of the installation as you saw in the pictures and the slides. So we're looking at, Rick is looking at solutions for that installation and what should we do to do that as well. So we don't have that as an issue right after this.
Yeah, really. So in the CPI, it's 190.
Yes, it's 190 in the overall table. It wasn't updated in the description of the specific project, but the overall table is where we added up and, you know, try to keep the level $10 million a year of capital spending. The 190,000 is included in that total.
So the difference between 190,000, the 127 that you're here today for is what the painting is?
No, the painting is gonna be more than that. And that was included in my presentations, the painting. Without any installation work. We have a paint estimate at 115,000 to sandblast the entire cover arena and paint the cover arena, all of the metal structure. So that is why I wanted to be as transparent as possible at the last board meeting. But yes, there is still that outstanding amount. Correct requesting that is over the 190,000 estimate from last year. As unfortunately as the installation piece of it was not predicted last year. And then as Rick got the prices last year for LED lights, for blacktop improvements and for the paint estimate, those have gone up over the last year since we budgeted. Well, just like many other things we've heard with the sheriff's probably as well. I know Highway said the blacktop is going up 25%. The LED lights went up about $10,000, and the paint is all $15,000. So
This was in the CIP book, this is the one that we kind of pushed to the side so that they could get the boathouse or the, pardon me, the
Boat
boat landing. Yeah. Is that not right?
I don't know that it was pushed to the side. The boat landing was put through first.
the bowl landing came to the board early due to the grant that was required.
Came to the board the very month that you came on board. I think Vicky brought it up. Vicky Redland brought it on to the board early, and we had a little argument about that. Okay.
Oh, that is okay. Okay.
All right.
Yep, I do have some recollection of that. Yep.
All right. And so this job for the blacktopping of Sunview or whatever, the expo area, was pushed to the side so that that could come in. And now we're dealing with this and it's going over budget. See where I'm going with this?
And this project is purely from a maintenance standpoint to try to continue. So
We know that blacktopping and doing that project is a maintenance issue. We're now guaranteed that we've got the boat landing coming and everything there. And this is going over budget. Let's put a motion on the floor in a second so we can discuss it, everybody. All right. Now, what are your thoughts, board?
I already voted for this in the Parks Committee.
Yeah.
It's needs to get done.
Is there any way to squeeze the budget for this particular project any other way? So at least it looks better to the board when we take it out there.
If I may, originally last year, like Director Colley said, this was a budget of $190,000.
Yeah.
We are currently at 127 right now. So technically coming in under budget right now. The problem is that, like Adam explained before, as we get through more of the paint aspects, we realize that we're going to do more damage to the insulation on the covered arena roof than what was going to be acceptable standards for our clientele. So that's why we pulled that portion out for now. And if we had to move that section back to next year, we could do that because it's a multi prospect. I've got multiple quotes, different ideas of how to address the insulation damage, and then the paint aspect. So realistically, that could get pushed back to next year if we had to. This aspect addresses 30 years of the blacktop deterioration. We're getting into some unstable surfaces when we're loading the dump trucks with the board. The LED lighting, you know, that's gonna be a cost savings. The covered arena in itself, you know, very fast payback. Overall, this project and the LED portion pays for itself in 8 years, and then reduces our electricity consumption.
Excuse me, but what would happen if you push the paint back for you, or stop it? And we're going into a new budget year then.
So I have two to, yes, let me answer that question first. So I think that one more year, I don't think will make a large difference in regards to, if I agree with Director or Expo Manager Holmes, that I think we could wait one more year on the paints if we wanted to spread out this capital project cost and give us the ample amount of time to properly, as we talked to 3 different contractors, they have 3 different ideas, because it is a little bit more complicated how the insulation is in there. It is sandwiched between the roof and the purlins. So there's 3 different ways so far that we learned. So we want to make sure we do our due diligence to make sure that we find the most cost effective and it's going to last the longest. The steel structure is not at a point where it's at a point where we still can sandblast off the rust, sandblast and paint and preserve that steel for many more years. If 5 years from now, I might not be able to say that same thing. To address your first question too about what, you know, is there any other cost savings we can do within these items? I will say I think Rick's done a tremendous job, and really also kudos to a lot of our other departments, highway and facilities, in that the LED lights, that's just material cost. So the facilities department's going to install all 200, and I apologize, the board meeting I think said over 100, and Rick corrected me, it is over 200 lights. That's going to be installed in-house, which obviously would double the cost if we would have a contract. The blacktop improvements, the parks department is going to help with some of the drainage issues, and then highway is going to do all the paving. So, you know, we're trying, the only thing that's being done by a contractor per se is the gutters, and that's a minimal cost for $12,000. So we're trying our best to do it as cost effective as possible.
Can I ask a question? I'm going to support this, but I wanted to say one thing. Taking out a project does not make it under budget, right? So it's not under budget, but I get what you guys are doing, and I see that. Secondly, yes, you're going to spread it out. I get that. That's fine. I don't think it's necessary because this is something that has to be done with this project. So I'd be okay with adding it on sooner than later if that's what you need, because I worry that if you do split it, then it has to be in the approval and go through all this next year also.
You talking about the painting?
Yeah, but I don't know if it's.
Push it down a little too far.
I mean, we could.
I mean, you're just putting lipstick on a pig at this point, trying to get it passed for next year.
We need piecing together, and
Yeah.
yes, 100% agree with you. Then that's why I'm trying to be as transparent. It's over budget, but we budgeted last
Right.
year.
Well,
100%.
everything is over budget this year because of inflation. So
But the reason this was taken off originally was because it would take too long because of the problem with insulation.
The reason we remove this is because we want to make sure we find the best solutions. So we're looking at least 3 solutions at this point for insulation.
And it would mean
We want to make sure we come up with the most
it would
cost
take
effective.
too long for the whole project. Right, approved.
Correct, that's why yes.
That's the reason.
The LED light, obviously when facilities get a chance to start installing LED lights, if you buy a time, and then the more timely one is highway. Obviously paving, you know, the paving season is typically, well, should be May, but May through, you know, roughly September, October, so.
Adam, I'll vote for it as far as putting it all together in a package. I can see why we don't want to split it off, because it will entail another round, but we've got to go with the least expensive and the best quality paint job that you can get without, dragging this out into more numbers and more dollars into the project.
So possible. So this number, the 115,000, just paint, doesn't include any installation at this point. So that 115,000, that was our paint.
That was the lowest of the 3 bids that we got. Just
That's gonna bring much insulation.
That's what we're trying to figure out.
it's so brittle that the painter is worried about. He's just gonna tear it to shreds when he paints it. So we have to come up with a process of, do we paint the stuff, put up new insulation, do we paint and then put a protective barrier over it? Or we have another company that wants to just sheet metal the whole thing, and then we'll never have to worry about insulation again. So therefore, is the one I'm making right now.
And what is that?
He said it's gonna be a couple weeks before he puts on.
So because of what he just said, I'm okay with splitting it just in case something, you get a lower bid of something else. So I'm okay with that.
You are okay with splitting?
I am just because it sounds like it, I'm gonna leave it up to you guys. I'm gonna try not to micromanage you guys. So I'm gonna say, you're in this job, you know what you're looking at, and if this is the way you want to do it, I will follow your lead.
And keep in mind, just anything over 25,000 that's not done in-house. So the LED lights is an example. We're gonna have to, yes, we got quotes from multiple, but we're gonna have to pick that out. So, you know, hopefully we receive 3, 4, 5 bids on that material. So just keep that in mind as well.
Does public service have any programs yet, like for changing the lighting system?
Yes.
So it's part of,
The Excel sheet accounts for rebates. The initial budget, I did not include rebate because you have to apply for a putback, so it's not exactly a guarantee. Yes, there is about $8,000, $8,700 in rebates. So we would take that initial expense down, you know, in the end.
and then my question is, so now when we get $8,500 back, years ago, that money used to always go into the county executive's funny money budget, where he could do what he wanted to. Does that go back to the general fund, or does the executive get to spend that as he wishes?
With the one.
Maybe you wouldn't answer that, I guess.
Yeah, I would assume the project budget, but I would defer to the finance director on that one.
Oh, that would be, going back to the general fund unless it's authorized by the board for additional spend.
The other way that we've done this in the past with rebates on some of our other lighting projects is that we purchased them through Batteries Plus lighting, and then they actually gave us the reduced price ahead of time. And we did some over at some. Actually, we signed over that to them, they gave us the reduced cost right away. We didn't have to wait for that also. It is something that they are offering, if they were to get the bid for this project, they would offer that same thing again.
The staff would hope that that 5,500 or 55,000 is $8,700 less.
Yeah.
But it's just not a guarantee, so we just obviously don't have to guarantee that.
Won't give you an easy road out of this, you know. Yeah.
I love this. Is a great discussion. I appreciate it.
We've got a motion and a second. We're gonna make a vote. All those in favor?
I
Aye. 4-0. Thank you. Adam. Okay, we're down to number.
You want to handle number 3 now? That's where.
Number 3. Yes, and this is a discussion on not only our future meeting dates, but our time of meeting. And I think that's all we're really, at the organizational meeting, that's all we were really interested in, is making the time come out, so we could all, you know, be here at the same time. Unfortunately, Steve Bender isn't here, but Steve gave me a note and said he wants a certain time to disclose that as soon as somebody makes a motion. That we
So moved that we discuss.
discuss the timing.
Yes.
I move that we keep the time the same.
Do we need a second?
Need a second to discuss it.
I made a motion. You
I'll
want to
second
second it?
Okay, so we're open for discussion on the time and meeting date arrangement.
And I'd like to see the time stay as it is.
You want to see it at 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock? Yes. And on Thursday, right? Thursday at 8.
Yes.
I'm flexible. I know that he has a hard time getting here, so I would be okay with what would be appropriate for you.
September through June, or May, September through May, I would be all the way. That's it.
So we'd want it at 9 o'clock.
I could make 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
Because like today, I could ask off, but it's not guaranteed that I will.
We don't want you to do anything.
I'd be more than okay with 9.
I'm proposing is that we make it at 9 o'clock for Thursdays, first Thursday of the month. Okay,
That would work for me.
and that would work for you too, wouldn't it?
For Betsy.
You have to repeat that. You're in favor of, I was deep in thought with my weight's down. I couldn't go for yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I propose that we make a change to 9 o'clock on Thursdays. And it would be the first Thursday of the month.
But it wasn't there some for certain months or something that he said?
Well, wait a
I
minute.
could
No,
make 8 o'clock in summertime.
Yeah,
Let's keep it inconsistent. What about Steve? Is he okay with that?
okay with now. All right. I'm thinking 9 o'clock on Thursday. It would eliminate your problem altogether, although you're not gonna have a problem in half a month. Okay,
You know, there might be days around 5 minutes late or something.
yeah, no, I just don't want that. I want nice, smooth operation. So if we make it as, let's see, you've got a problem with early hours anyway.
Oh, it doesn't matter. I will do it. I hate doing it, but I will do it.
But I get up too, okay? So let's make it 9 a.m. Is that all right with you? Is that all right with you? Joan, you got a vote here.
Sure, that's good.
9 o'clock on Thursday, the first Thursday of the month. We'll make that throughout the year from now until we all quit.
Can we take a vote on that? So we have
Yes,
it on.
we're gonna do that. Okay, so we've got the discussion open. We've got a second on the discussion. All those in favor of 9 o'clock a.m. on the first Thursday of the month. Raise your hand.
Aye.
Raise your hand. And Steve, he said so too. So first Thursday of the month.
Well, we
At 9 a.m.
4-0.
There'll be 4,
did Supervisor Albright vote in favor?
4-1.
Yeah, he's.
4-1. You're voting
You
no.
want a day?
Oh, so we can't move forward with it.
You have to be,
We have to be unanimous.
You have to be unanimous to pick a time earlier than 3 p.m. So if the committee can't unanimously agree on a time, it'll have to be 3 p.m. or later on whatever day is chosen.
How about 8:30?
He can't make it.
I mean, maybe today.
He took off today. Early.
All right, then I'll make it unanimous.
we'll make it unanimous. All right, that's settled for unanimous. All 5 of us, including Steve. Voted. And Joan.
I approve. I'll give my blessing. And Joan blesses us.
Thank you.
Okay. So we're now at 9:00. First Thursday. Okay. Down to item 11. Resolution authorizing $5,160,000 for Winnebago County Highway Department's 2022 annual infrastructure capital improvement program, along with $750,000 parking lot capital improvements. Assuming it's blacktopping. And we went through that program just Tuesday night.
Approve it to bring it to the floor.
So, Mr. Demo, do you have anything to add?
Obviously, you just presented this to the committee. If there was any questions, I'm open for any questions, or if you want me to.
No, they won't take any questions, so after you make whatever,
Okay,
and then we'll vote it, or we'll put it on a motion.
okay.
So,
We just kind of want to go over the, go back through this. Obviously, our first project was the CB double J roundabout, and that's looking for construction for this year. The future County Road T, that will be construction this year. County Road, existing County Road T, that will be a pulverized and paved, and that will be a jurisdictional transfer back to the town of Clayton. Double left and Zoro Road, looking for design. We cut that hill down to its neighbor. The DP Road Diet project will be finalized design and construction. County Road G from T to 45 will be a mill and overlay. County Road A from double G to Lena, there'll be a mill and overlay. The highway department building upgrades, feasibility study, and then finally the community park paving the parking lots there.
that's right. That's over in the county park across from the expo area. Are you going to do
There's 4 lots.
are you going to do that and then go to over by the expo? Are you going to schedule that?
However, we can coordinate, we coordinated with Adam. Adam's given us the dates they have any events. So anything that would be done, we would coordinate with Adam, so we eliminate any of the event times. So we don't interrupt any festivals or anything that's going on with that. We keep contact with Adam. And just resolve that time frame.
Okay.
With our projects, I mean, when we get on road projects, we can, obviously mobilizing is a big cost for us. So once we mobilize in our project, we like to stage through that project. Some of these, when we do overlays, we will come in and we will put a binder course down, and then we will mobilize to another project and put another a binder coat down. That's your first layer.
Yeah.
So we do have some flexibility to move around on these projects. But typically, depending on where we are, we don't like to, mobilize from the south end of the county to the north end, things like that. So if we're close, we're very flexible with that. Definitely work with the parks.
Yeah, I would think, keep the costs down. Okay. So just a second, we're gonna make a motion.
I'm so moved. All right.
Try to make a full motion, please.
Do you want me to make a full motion? I make a motion to authorize $5.160 million for the Winnebago County Highway Department's 2022 annual infrastructure capital improvement program, and $750,000 for parking lot capital improvements.
Second. Second from you. So good.
Okay, how did we come up with 150,000
For
for this project?
the AP road act,
The ones, it's 100, yeah.
I mean, that was from previous budget we had. That's what was.
So I guess what I'm getting at is we're telling them that we'll go up to 150,000, maybe somebody would do it for 120,000. I mean, I'm just saying that I think the process is, now somebody's gonna look at this and then they'll bid on it at 148,000. Somebody bid on it if we didn't say that, and it's nothing, probably not sure if that's your way to do it, but I'm guessing.
I guess that's more, yeah, more finance.
Is that something you do internally or would that be bid out?
I mean, typically what happens is the engineering firms will come up with cost. Same thing with the.
I meant the actual work, would be hiring someone to do it or just?
Correct, yeah.
So it would be a public bid process, and so the idea is to get multiple bidders bidding against each other to get the best price. So they always know, I mean, it's always been publicly available how much money has been approved by the county board for particular projects. But that's how we rely on trying to get the best price, so we don't just bid the maximum budget. Someone else will come in and bid under them and get the business.
I mean, these projects, the engineering firms will come up with costs, preliminary costs. Like right now, with fuel costs. Obviously, with most projects, there's going to be a bump in fuel. There's signage with this, metal signs of price, paint. There's all this. I mean, we just kind of have a rough estimate of that kind of uncharted territory on these prices and supply chain is probably the biggest concern right now. Those are rough estimates.
So because I'm new on the board, on this committee in particular, is it possible to pull things out, or is that something that we would do as a full board?
No, you can amend, we can't amend this.
Oh.
We can amend it, but as to pulling things out, that's something that you have to do directly.
Typically, when we look at these projects, it's always driven by safety. Number one is our safety concerns with it, pavement conditions.
Sure.
Those are our number one things we look at. And a large part of this is our phaser ratings that was developed by the state, that scale of 1 to 10.
Right, you explained that the other night.
So what we do is we will look at those phaser ratings, and then we look at traffic counts, ADTs, average daily traffic. So we could have a road that is in, poor condition, but maybe only have 500 cars a day. We may have another road that is in poor condition, but has 10,000 cars a day. So we look at those traffic counts, highly traffic or highly traveled roads. Those are our priority at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So everything is driven by safety and smooth ride. And everybody wants a smooth ride on a road and the road's blocked. So those are our number one when we do these. So these are most of these projects, like I said, everything's tied with safety with these, and they have great safety concerns when we get these. So once we propose those, for me to pull them out, it's one of those where I just look at the safety factor with it. It's just kind of one where these projects that are out there, where they have.
Well, you brought up the building part. Now your building that you're.
Yeah, I guess I should
So
have
that's
left that.
not
That
in
is
here?
that is in the item 12, so that actually is in the next.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay,
so I
yeah,
probably
that's right.
should've thought-
Yeah,
That's
that's the only thing I don't have a copy of, because you went over that the other night and I didn't have anything prior to that.
Sure.
Well, I took this with me, so I was able to look through it while you were going through your stuff, which is very, very helpful. I didn't see a copy of this though, so if that's possible to have that, or you'll probably have that to us later at some point,
Sure.
correct?
Yeah, when originally came down, I was making this just because the files.
Yeah, it is.
It's
Also, And then also, I'm on the planning committee for the city of Neenah. And I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but the first project, the roundabout,
Yes.
just right before that, they're adding, I don't know if you're familiar, but they're adding this huge, new car wash. It's huge, right there.
Okay.
So right before that, so this is gonna be a really nice, because I think you're gonna see a lot more traffic on there. I think your number is gonna go up, so I was happy to see that, because I don't know if you, because I'm on the planning committee, I knew that it was coming up.
Usually like Chris Hayes, I
Talk to him a lot.
talk a lot with Chris
So
Hayes.
you
and
knew that
Jerry
probably
Kaiser.
ahead of time, that big, I
Yeah,
mean, it's gonna be pretty massive. It's
Yeah,
gonna be
this-
big there.
yeah, this project, we've been working hand in hand.
Oh,
Touch base
good,
with them a
good.
couple times a week. So yeah, we've a great working relationship with city, so yeah, definitely. I appreciate that.
I didn't know if you knew. So other than that, yeah, I'm glad that that was pulled out. I guess I didn't realize that when I was reading through this. I think it's something older. So I'm happy to see that. Not that I don't want you to have the upgrades. I won't talk about that one right now, but I know that there were some things that were brought up about the one that's on Larson Road. So that's why I was asking if something would be pulled out and how we would address that. Now, one of the roads you talked about too, that it comes up to a hill and then you look over. So I'm from West Virginia.
Sure.
So all of our roads are like that. So I was surprised that that's a safety concern because,
Right.
that's every one of our roads.
Sure.
So I don't understand why that would be coming up on a hill would be a safety concern.
Right.
So just,
Yep. No, I mean, that's a great, obviously from Wisconsin, driving there and notice it, obviously, I look at that and I'm like, wow, I can't believe they have roads like that. But here, I mean, we're relatively flat in Winnebago County as
Sure.
far as, elevation. So when we have these intersections like that, where there is that hill and there's a set stopping distance. So as you're traveling, if you're traveling 55 miles an hour, you should be able to see the window height of the vehicle at that. And you should be able to stop without locking up your brakes, just come to a nice stop. And then whatever the distance is, that's your site stopping distance. It's all based upon federal and state regulations with that. Obviously the areas that like on Pioneer Road, I was on call for that fatality. And when I got out there, the first things, we started looking at it, the sheriff's car's got a little close, we started looking at this. And my first thoughts are is, what caused the accident? You start looking at that and, that crest of that hill, it is a vision issue. If you come over that, was that the main cause of that accident? I think it contributed to it. Was it totally, there could have been, when they wearing a seat belt or, what.
under the
different issues,
influence or what have you, yeah.
But when these areas come up and we know there is a condition in there where visibility is hard. So if you look down the road and all of a sudden that car just pops out from behind that crest of that hill, that's what we look at with those. And if we can, cut those down and prevent any accidents with that, that's what we're looking for with that. I mean, if you're, like you said, you're comfortable with that, you know that, but people that are not comfortable, or, accustomed to driving on roads like that. Sometimes, somebody from out of state, we have a lot of people from out of state coming in with EAA and stuff, traveling our roads. They may not be comfortable with that. And, so we want to take those issues that factor out of the equation and provide that safe road for them to travel. And that's what we want. Unfortunately, a lot of these projects, it's driven how many fatalities. And if we can do something before that happens, that's where I look at it. I hate to see something come because of a fatality.
So we could take something out, but it doesn't make sense because of the way that the construction work goes. Is that what you're saying?
We could take, possibly take something out. It's just, how long we want to, these projects, a lot of this, the Zora Road one, this has been, like I said, we purchased that right away in 2007. I believe John Hayes was the highway commissioner at the time when
the board approved, the highway committee approved that to purchase that right away. So this has been going on, 15 years, this process started. So we've already kicked this down the road quite some time now. So whether, we kick it down the road another 15 years, I think we've done that long enough, and I think your traffic counts are high enough now. If you go out in that area, the development is just booming out there. So you have more traffic on that road. I just think it's time we push this back long enough. A project like that, the condition A and G, those both roads are such poor condition. So we started looking at,
I drive A all the time.
yeah, so that road condition of that area. So, it's to the point where, it's a safety issue too, with that condition. So a lot of these projects all of these projects we have, wish there was a better option, but as far as from, the safety point of it, I think these are all, the reason why we're proposing is because it's needed.
Okay.
All right. We've got a motion on the floor and a second on it. Do we have any other discussion from anybody else? Let's have a vote. All in favor?
Bye.
Aye. And there's no nays. 4-0. Okay, we're going on to the next, and we have that as well. You want to explain a little bit?
Sure. I'll brief.
Resolution authorizing $300,000 to initiate design services with the Winnebago County Highway Department building improvements. Okay, that's what we're on.
Right.
Okay.
So, like I mentioned, our department, was constructed in 1995. Since 95, we've had no building upgrades. Our heating and cooling system facilities has been out. It's basically they're telling us, it's on its last leg. There's not a lot we can do with that system. One of the biggest problems out there is the mold problem. The girls in the office, they don't leave. They take their lunches in this facility. The conditions there, they've been pushed so long. I can tell you, the office that I was in, when they pulled when we had the flooding and they pulled the wall pieces off, how much mold was in those walls was staggering. And it's one of those I've had, people come in looking for access permits that come in public. They'll ask that they can't handle the mold and mildew if we can stand outside. I had and a lot of them are farmers. They're used to the dust and the outside. When they come in and ask, hey, can we go to a different room because of those issues? It's a great concern to me for my employees. This is one that we've been dealing with for a long time. Like I said, now we're running air purifiers in our building now. At least our air quality when facilities is checking them. At least we're meeting better air quality now. Once again, we're coming into that time of the year now. Obviously in the winter, it's probably the best time ever with that. We're coming into that time now. We're going to see that those issues come in. What's happening with our building is our building faces the north, so we don't get a lot of sunlight out of that. So any moisture that's on that building is actually wicking through the block, and the moisture is getting in between the walls. That's where the issue is. And Mike Elder has had some architects come in and look at that. I was supposed to have a meeting yesterday with that firm, and they canceled because of an illness. But the issues with that, definitely those are some of our bigger issues up there. As far as like our outside with our facility and our we have our front office and then we have our back shop. So our back shop had a mezzanine area that had our training facility and our public meeting rooms. We have no, for ADA accessible, it's not, we have no elevator, we have a freight elevator, which we have used. We were told it's not for personal transportation, do not put anybody in, so we don't do that anymore. So when we do have public meetings, we cannot use that up there. It's right at the front of our maintenance shop too. It's very loud, it's distracting. I know the sheriff's department's come over and used it. And you know, after they're leaving, they ask them how everything went. It's distracting, a lot of noise out there, which we can't do anything with that. But you know, like I said, the biggest thing is with our front office and just upgrading. We need some more space out there. You know, with hard time getting vehicles. It's kind of like anything with your personal vehicle. I mean, the more you wash it, the longer it's gonna last, maintain it. We just don't have the facilities to do that anymore. So like some of these still falls that unless we unhook these and you know try to juggle these around, our other option is outside. So we have to go outside. If it's 20 below zero, try to wash these. It doesn't work very well. You know, the conditions we're in the absolute worst conditions. Those trucks were run 24/7 and not shut down. And you know, so with not being able to get trucks, this is one of our things that we need to be able to preserve. So this is, you know, our building upgrade is going to help us be able to do that. A lot of our vehicles now, I mentioned during the winter, we're parking a lot of them at the Parks Park, over at the Parks Expo in the horse barn during the winter. A lot of our equipment goes over there just to free up some space in our heated storage. So any of those pieces of equipment we don't use in the winter get stored there. So the conditions, you know, parking everything outside, obviously when it gets cold, the equipment doesn't start, crews are delayed, you know, so a lot of issues with that. So it's and one thing too is, you look at employee morale. You know, when you come into a building that, you know, it's run down, you know, it helps morale when at least you can kind of have somewhere for them to go. If they have nowhere to put their, you know, a lot of guys, all their, everything they own, their clothing for weather, they keep it in the truck because we don't have space for them to put anything. Our lockers, I mean, at our tour, I'd love to see the lockers. The lockers are about that wide. I mean, anything they have has to go in that locker. So we just don't have the space to accommodate that. So they're kind of living out of their car to change clothes, extra boots. With that, and two, you know, with COVID too, is we got people everywhere. We put some out in the mechanic shop, we scattered them all over the place. So the facilities we have, we just, you know, even at lunchtime, it's very congested in there with the crews. So I think this project, you know, after since 1995, it definitely needs some work in there. We've everything facilities is done, you know, just to keep us going. I believe they've done, and we're to that point where we just have other options.
I think the biggest sale comment that you have on here for the lack of space, a place that you need to store or bring trucks into, the amount of cleaning that you need to do to keep those trucks in top shape. And those trucks have to be, you know, in top shape to have to wear or go through the wear and tear that you put in them in a year.
We'll make a motion.
I think we'll make a final motion on this one.
I'd like to make a motion to authorize $300,000 to initiate design services for the Winnebago County Highway Department buildings improvements.
Anybody with a second? Who's the second? Who's the second? Okay, Dave's the second. Everybody for it? Oh, you want to make
I want to
a?
ask a question.
Go ahead. Ask.
So, so this is just for the design services. Now, a quick question about this. and this is a general question, this might be more with you too, John, and probably, finance, but have we ever done, when I was on the Board of Education for Nina, we did a complete, because we approve a lot of these little 300,000, whatever here and there, right? So we did a complete overall facility study on the entire district, which was 13 buildings. Have we discussed doing something like that? Because I feel like we do these continuously, and I feel that if we did an overall facility study, that it would make this a lot more streamlined. Am I wrong on this, or?
You can be recognized. Yeah.
Thank you. No, this is actually something that's shocking. I don't think we've really done that in the past, but we are working on it currently to get an estimate of how much it's going to cost. So we've had a couple of meetings now with facilities and McKinstry, I believe is the name of the company. We're also going to look at Johnson's Controls and a couple of companies to see who could do this, to actually take a look at all of the buildings and that's what the deferred maintenance is. And are we really set up for the long haul, or are we putting us in a position that we're going to accrue a lot more cost down the road?
Right.
And that's a great point, and it's something that I've noticed and something that we're working on behind the scenes, so we can create a itemized agenda item report to bring it forward. So we are in the process administratively looking at to bring something forward to do exactly that.
Because it would save so much more money to do it all in one shot, and it's a third party, and then they could see everything, and we're not, I feel like we're piecemealing when we do stuff like this. You know, you're using one company to another company. So
We want to stay focused. I know that this is.
well, this is part of it.
I know this is important, but it's got to be focused on what we're doing. That particular, I have something to add to that. In that, you know, the sheriff's department complaining about having to drive 30 minutes to get to Rushford, and they don't have a satellite operation down in that area. Those kind of things, as well as the overall facilities and driving it. We don't have to get into this discussion, but believe me, people look at that, and that's something that has to be looked at down the road. I don't want to go any farther with this right now. Yes, sir.
I have a comment. Years ago, we built a new highway department. It wasn't a year later, they bought a new truck and I couldn't go in the main door. We had to change the main door. A couple of years later, something else happened. We couldn't. I mean, it changes all. I realize what you're saying, but it changes. Everything changes
Over time.
I think there's nothing wrong with the way we do it now. I'm just.
No, it's a discussion. I'm very open with the discussion with everything.
Let's not get too far away from the subject. All
right. If I could back to this project specifically, it obviously we had this conversation on different departments about the needs that they have. We've had some pretty tough conversations in my office with this particular project. It really comes down to safety. This is why I gave it my blessing to come ahead of time. The amount of oil that we found, what the guys had been dealing with for a while was ridiculous. We made the effort for facilities come and mediate as much as we could. I mean, he wasn't kidding when he said we had an air purifier as big as a refrigerator in there with several other air purifiers just to make it sustainable, breathable. It was not breathable. The first time I came to your office, it was rough. And so because of the safety concern, I think if the mold wasn't there, I think we could absolutely push this off and make sure that we're looking at this correctly. But because of two things for me, why I gave this project my blessing was the health and safety concern with the mold, and number two, with how hard it is for us to get trucks. We need to make sure that we are doing our best to maintain them. We already have a fleet that's older than it should be. If you can agree with that, and we can't replenish them because we tried to get 3 trucks this year, we were able to get two. So we're really struggling. So that's
as much as I totally understand what you're saying, and that is the vision that I have, that's why this project came forward individually for those two reasons.
Thank you.
You good? Okay, we're gonna vote. We've got a motion on the floor. We got a second. We've had a discussion. Let's start with you. Vote on those in favor. Aye. 4-0. That's pretty easy. Okay, thank you. Thanks for bearing with us, Bob. All right. We're all the way down to 14, which is consideration of the 2022 request for reclassification, which have been submitted pursuant to section 7 of the Winnebago employee compensation package. Where, by the way, is the wage study before we do this too?
And I referenced the wage study a little bit in this agenda item report. I can tell you I've got a draft of the request for proposal complete. I've got a few items I want to kind of polish up and tweak before we send it out for bid. I expect that we'll have that out yet this month in May. And then the timeline for actually having it complete. I mean, some of that's dependent yet. We have to determine, when it's ready to go out, what day it's going out, what time we're going to get the vendors to respond. But the compensation study request for proposal, I'm confident will be out in May.
Give us supervisors on the board time to react, to go to the budget with the numbers. Okay, we just have to have that. We can't keep coming back here and making changes, little piecemeal changes, and creating problems in all the other departments.
Absolutely, and I think the wage study really needs to be able to give us a comprehensive look.
Yes, sir.
Overall, so that we can address, we've had so many things come over the months, and we want to be responsive when needs come up. But I think it's helpful if we have some guidance overall, set a direction, and come up with a more strategic plan to address everything rather than all these piecemeal things.
Please.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. So that's my hope for the study, and I hope it aligns with your guys' hope and expectation would be as well.
Let's see, you have not met Mr. David.
I have met him, yeah.
He is our acting personnel director right now. So we've got a little discussion on the section 7 and all of the goodies that came along with that. That should be 14. This is a great thing. Mr. David, could you give us a little rundown on this?
Absolutely. First, in general, and I put in the agenda item report, but just as a quick refresher, every year, typically in December, Human Resources will put together any suggested changes overall to our compensation schedule. That'll typically go into effect January 1st, for the next year. The reclassification process really doesn't have anything to do with adding positions, changing positions to the TO. It's really a question of the positions as they're listed on the schedule, are they in the appropriate grade or not? And historically, we end up with 4, 6, maybe 8 reclassification requests each year, changing duties, changing educational requirements for positions, certain things that departments, it's a mechanism for them to bring that to our attention, ultimately to come to the committee to discuss if a change would be appropriate. This year, as you can see, we've had 18 requests from departments. Personally, I suspect that
a lot of that is pressure. I'm sorry.
Wanted to
Should I wait
catch-
till he's done or?
Yes, we haven't made a motion. We don't have a discussion started. We make a motion, we make a second on it, then we have a discussion started. He's giving us the overall picture right now from what he's put together. Go ahead, sir.
So I think a large reason for the number of requests we've had this year is that pressure from changes to the labor market. We haven't had the wage study completed. So I think departments are feeling some pressures as to what can they do to try to not only recruit but also retain. So that's one issue for the number. The other thing that I'd point out is I try to make a summary for you guys to look at for all the different requests that came in, along with some of my comments and what was requested to make a change to. And what I want to highlight is this annual wage cost at the very end. And I want to explain that as best as I can. What I took a look at, for instance, hospitality is the very first one. So I took a look at, we currently have 17 hospitality aid positions approved on the table of organization. So what I did is I took a look at everyone who's currently a hospitality aid and what their pay is currently. If this change were approved, some of those employees are already above the minimum. So those employees specifically would not see a pay increase if you pass this. Those who are below the minimum would obviously have to be paid the new minimum. So there would be an increase with that. Now, I took my look based at all 17 positions over the course of a year. And so in that case, it's just short of 32,000. But what I'd point out is that first of all, that's looking at 12 calendar months. We'd be looking at 7, so it's going to be less than that. And also because I took a look at all positions, we've got almost 6.5 hospitality positions vacant right now. So that accounts for over 18,000 of that lift, because it would be a lift if we hired people into those positions. But right now, we're not paying anyone in those 6.5 positions. So realistically, the annual wage cost, I tried to be transparent so that the committee could see the impact over the course of a year. But the actual, what would cost us in 2022, hospitality, for instance, taking out the vacant positions that we haven't hired yet, I can't project when we would hire someone. I would hope that having a more competitive wage would hopefully help us hire people a little bit more quickly. But realistically, it would be about a $14,000 increase based on our current employees. But out of that 14,000, again, that's looking at the year. That's not looking at the remaining 7 months. So we'd really be looking at roughly a $7,000 to $8,000 impact on Parkview's labor budget. But as we know, Parkview has significant staff shortages right now and vacancies. So at least from what's budgeted in their labor, they're going to be under budget for regular wages. I can't speak for, they've had certainly overtime, they've had reduced revenue, things like that. And I guess I didn't know how else to really explain it, but just know that if you were to approve, let's say, hospitality aid, it's not literally that it's going to cost us $32,000 in 2022. Obviously, going into the 2023 budget, as they plan for labor expenses, they'll have a new minimum base for hospitality aid that they'll have to take into account. And of course, that'll come through on the 2023 budget.
What about the ones that we dealt with 6 months ago with regard to the bumping that we started?
That's what created this.
Well,
We gave them a raise.
that's part of it.
And yeah, and I think you're referring to last year, we brought forth a couple resolutions. They adjusted the pay for CNAs, and I think we lifted the minimum last year. It went up to $16.95 an hour. And hospitality aid, for instance, we do hire employees as hospitality aides to stay as a hospitality aid.
but we also use it as a training ground where if someone wants to be a CNA, Parkview puts on classes where they'll train and certify them to be a CNA. But because they're not a CNA, when they're not certified, we in essence hire them as that hospitality aide. They get paid the hospitality pay until they pass the class with the certification, and then they move into a CNA position. Part of the issue number one is just the low pay in general for hospitality aides. But then also when we're trying to recruit a CNA, even someone who's not certified, there's a pretty significant difference in pay. And so getting them to, walk through the door as a hospitality aide at $13.48 an hour, is pretty challenging. So, but to get to your point, Parkview adjusted CNAs, RNs, and there's LPNs as well, LPNs. And as part of that, when they made some of those changes last year, they included, because some of those changes were significant. CNAs jumped up so much that you could have a CNA who had been here 10, 12, 15 years, who would basically be at the new minimum, or close enough to the new minimum that someone who started, a year before them, there was no meaningful difference in pay. So as part of their proposal last year, they not only increased the minimums, but then to fix some of that internal compression, they requested and the committee and board approved an internal move to existing employees based on how long they were here to make some separation.
So what is this gonna do to that raise in, because now we're looking at a new dollar amount for the bottom of the.
Correct. So first of all, at least you'll see later on, first of all, Parkview did pull their request for the LPN. And so I included it because it was submitted, but that's been pulled. You'll see my recommendation for nurses is not to approve that, but CNA, that's not being addressed. That was addressed last year. They're not looking to readdress that at this time. And if I could step back from hospitality aid and CNA for a second, you'll see that the first 7 requests on this first page summary, the hospitality aid, the administrative aid, the custodian, the food service assistant, the cook, transportation aid, and unit assistant, those positions all fall in grade 10, 11, or 12 on our compensation schedule. So those are the lowest paid positions in the county.
14, 16.
Yeah, so the hospitality aides are 13.48. Everything in grade 11 is 14.16. And one of the challenges that we're having from a recruitment standpoint is, even though it's not law, the de facto minimum for a lot of positions in the community is around the $15 an hour range, or sometimes even higher. So from a recruitment standpoint, the positions that are paid less than that are especially challenging to hire for. So really, big picture, what we're trying to propose, if you look for a second on the compensation schedule, that'll be a few pages back, just at the very first page. What we're proposing is to take the positions in grade 10 and 11 and move those into grade 12. Because that'll move that minimum pay to $14.86, which is a little bit more in line with some of the minimums that are being paid in the community. Now that does create a little bit of pressure on the grades and on the positions in grade 12. Because for instance, if we move the food service assistant from Parkview into grade 12, well, that's where the cook is. Right?
Yeah.
And so that's why cook, unit assistant, and transportation aide, we're proposing to move into grade 13 to keep that separation. Now, one of the reasons that personally I'm recommending these first 7 that we take this action is not only from a recruitment standpoint, but to the point that you made previously, Mr. Chairman, regarding the wage study.
obviously, none of us can say what the results of the wage study are going to be.
Yeah.
But I certainly would suspect, given today's labor market and the challenges all employers are facing, certainly the positions at the very beginning of our pay scale, I can't imagine that they would be telling us that, say, $13.48 an hour is going to be competitive in today's employee market.
Yeah.
So from that standpoint, I think making some of these reclassification changes now will not only help us from a recruitment and hiring and trying to fill these positions, which in turn obviously will help the departments do what they need to do. But with the timing of the wage study, I'll also then be able to give the most accurate, up-to-date compensation schedule
Okay,
of any changes you would
Okay.
approve, if any.
we've heard enough. Now, what I want Betsy to do is make the motion. Okay.
Make the motion to, for the consideration of the 2022 request for reclassification, which has been submitted pursuant to section 7 of the Winnebago County Employee Compensation Plan.
Do we have a second? Thanks, Dave. Dave, second. All
If
right,
you have any questions, obviously I would be happy to try to answer any of those.
you just turn the motives. All of them gonna come at you.
I'm say thank you. I get what your struggles, and my daughter's a CNA, and I think the program of training them and doing it too is very forefront idea, and thank you for that. I think that'll bring in a little bit more, but no, I get it. I mean, I think we're in a market, you're in a market right now where you see where you need to go. I mean, I know it's important to get that study in, but I think it's market value, right? Of a person and what they're doing and so forth. So I think you're on the right track here. So thank you for this very in-depth information. So it was nice. Thank you.
Go ahead.
I got questions. Sure. Who was all involved in the recommended grade? And is that what was voted?
So I listed on the sheet, obviously, what the current grade is. The requested grade is what I was sent by department. Recommended grade, that's my recommendation to you as a committee. So either if I had questions following up with the department, doing my own analysis of where we're at. Also, just when I sent this out, because we do this reclassification annually, one of my requests to departments was to be judicious and selective in what they send, because realistically, I think that wage study is going to give us that blueprint.
Right.
And, you've seen some of my recommendations. Doesn't necessarily mean I think they're necessarily in line with market, but I think addressing it through the wage study would be more appropriate, since that's going to be coming up. Ultimately, the recommended grade is.
Because that's, I mean, I'm pretty impressed with this. It looks like there's a lot of work that went into this.
Thank you.
And I agree with probably most or all of it. Maybe from my standpoint. And is this what we're voting on?
Yes, but I think what we've done in years past, and Mike can correct me if I'm wrong, I think as a committee, and certainly it's your choice how you'd like to do it. If you want to make amendments and pass it in mass, but I think in years past, they've gone position by position.
Not always. The compensation policy calls for him to make these recommendations and then for the committee to vote on whether to accept the recommendation. So there have been some years where the committee was comfortable voting on them as a group, and other years, last year, we certainly went position by position because there were differing views about different positions. So it's the committee's option whether to have a motion to, you could make a motion to approve all of the recommendations, and then if anyone wanted to propose any amendments to those recommendations to change that, that's one way of handling it, or we could discuss them point by point.
I think I'd like to see the recommendations that Mr. Shebeck has put out on the table and have that go forward rather than the individual line by line.
I would agree. I'm not an HR person, so, since out of my wheelhouse, I have to defer to the fact that you know what you're doing. So, and it looks like you know what you're doing, because I've looked through a lot of these, so yeah, thank you. I would be very comfortable with that also.
I would also, because I agree, I believe in what he does.
All right. All right, you?
Could I make one point?
Yes,
Mr. Chairman? If you look at the CNA coordinator on page 2, that is one that frankly I hedged on a little bit, seeing what the committee's preference would be. You can see that it's currently in grade 19. The request was to move it to 21P. My recommendation was one of two things: either keep it 19 with no change, or I could see an argument to move it to 20. Personally, I don't feel strongly one way or the other, but as my recommendation right now, if you were to pass this in mass, I would not have your direction on what the committee's preference would be for that. So that's, I guess I would just ask that if you do vote to either approve or deny all of these as submitted, that the committee first clarify if you'd like no change on CNA coordinator, or to move it to 20. I do think an argument could be made that, again, with the wage study, it's not that significant of a change in the sense of, I think we could wait and keep it at 19 and address it in the wage study. Okay. Can I make a comment, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I do actually have an opinion on that.
Yes.
That my suggestion or my recommendation would be 20, just because the nursing scheduler position, which works very closely with this position, should work very closely with this position. I'm not sure has historically. That's been a problem. But since those two positions work fairly closely together, one thing we have to think about is anytime there's two positions with a different grade but similar job requirements or qualifications, that you don't want to jockey for position and worry about, am I going to get a promotion to scheduler or a demotion to one or the other? So I have a bias in keeping it in the same grade as a similar type position.
What's the person that was in the 20 going to say? Whether is she going to say that I want to be?
On the other hand, the current staff is the scheduler is new and the CNA coordinator is not new, so there's already
In my
relationship
argument,
between
again, back to that employee, if they were to ask that, is grade 21 is where the LPNs are, and that's where some of our more professional skilled
More
nursing
licensed.
positions are. And because they're a scheduler, to me, that's not a comparable grade to move them into. So I think we
I'm
would
good
be
with 20 then.
20
The 20 recommendation.
Amendment to change it.
No, I don't think so. Let it go. Let
Recommendation.
make the recommendation to him and do the entire reclassification on section 7 according to the plan.
We have a first and a second.
Yeah.
We need a more clarified motion.
No, I'm going to put it as Betsy May approved as submitted by Mark Hobbeck's suggestions, second by Dave Albrecht. And then I'll just say the CNA coordinator was unanimously approved at range 20,
Okay.
something like that. Good for you?
Everybody in agreement? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 4-0. Move on to resolutions. You have to make the motion.
For the resolution of commendation for Bev Ostrander, Kim Thompson, and Mary Salzer.
You got a second? Okay, David second.
May I
Any,
make a comment?
any comments?
I just want to point out, and I'm not sure how we're going to handle this, but there was a county board rule change. And I know it was originally drafted, there was some limit on the number of commendations that was taken out, but the board did pass a rule change, moving commendations, or at least the reading of commendations, apparently to, board communications prior to resolutions being introduced. So I don't know, maybe it's just something for a future agenda item to really think about how we do that. The way I would read what we currently have is, the reading of the personal statement would be in the order of business before the resolutions now, and then the resolutions themselves would be separate. But it does kind of raise the question of how we do this. And one option would be to consider putting the detail in the resolution as opposed to just reading it verbally, which was.
Well, you're handing out the, the detail or the comments. And I look at it as reading them first before the resolution,
Yeah.
and then adding a resolution to the end of it. I mean, normally you want to verify and then receive the resolution itself and have people vote on the resolution, not the comment. So,
Well, it was brought up by the previous chair, Supervisor Rasmussen. Really just as part of the discussion on the resolution, he wanted to read a little bit more personal statement. So that's how it has been handled, is after the resolution was moved, then he would read that as the discussion, and no one else typically would have any other discussion. But, moving that part of it, the earlier, I'm not quite sure how that relates to the resolution.
earlier in the agenda.
Right, earlier in the agenda,
So
before the county board chairman's report,
Who
before
makes
the,
the agenda?
well, the order of the agenda is established by the county board rules.
Yeah, but, who sets, who does the typing of the agenda?
The county clerk
Yes,
is typing the agenda.
she should be here to note what we're talking about, or we're giving her instructions. She does her own thing. Okay, we don't tell her.
I
how
assume
to do that.
these accommodations go to autumn then to the,
Yeah, they go through corp council. The county clerk is officially responsible for sending out the agenda. They send it out. Corp council kind of puts it together and gives it to the county clerk. It's how we actually handle it. But I'm just saying, it seems kind of unclear how we're handling the accommodations now based on that change to board rules.
Little to do with what we're doing here today with regard to this.
That's a question and then I have.
Yes,
Who actually writes these up?
who actually writes up the little detail? I got it from you.
Right, so what happens is, once this committee approves these commendations, we'll let the department heads know, and then someone from each department, whether it's department head, immediate supervisor, they'll draft a draft that comes to me, and then I filter that through to chop it down to no more than 150 words, try to kind of clean it up a
Thank you
little
very
bit,
much.
so that you've got something a little bit shorter, sweeter. So it comes directly from departments, but there's a little bit of,
Some need more editing.
Yes.
More tweaking.
Yes.
Tweaking.
yes, a little bit of tweaking, and then ultimately, they can give it to the chairman.
But historically, like I read the old newspapers. And historically, the detail was always in the resolution. I mean, there's a little bit of detail in here. But that's all I got.
that, when you sign it, you have to sign it yet, that will be mailed to them. I give that resolution that you're gonna sign, it will be mailed to their house, and that's all they're gonna see.
Just saying, it would be nice if they got the details in there. Because otherwise it's lost.
It's something, it could be attached.
But if the process would be more. It'd take longer to do the process.
You want it on parchment or would you like it on?
That's nice.
Yeah. That's nice. Okay. If they're getting something, if they want to put it on a little plaque or something, they can do that. I don't think we should go with so many extremes.
I think you have to do whatever is shortest to make, so we don't have any more midnight meetings.
All right. Yeah.
Some other counties and sometimes how we've done it in the past is we've actually invited these people to show up to the meeting. And if they showed or not was depending on whether they read the accommodation for them. So if somebody were to show up in person, I think it would be great for us to read that, acknowledge them in front of the board. And kind of puts the ball in their court whether we read it out loud or not. Maybe that gives a little bit of clarification to your point. If we do that, you know, through the chairman's report or whatever, however the board rules interpreted, which may give everybody the best of both worlds. If people want to show up, it would be better for them, and the people that don't want to show up, maybe to Supervisor Albrecht's point, it would shorten the meeting.
Yeah, and having it at the beginning of the agenda so they can leave. That's how we used to do it on the Board of Education. They would come, we would do it, and then they would take off. So they didn't have to stay for the entire midnight.
Just
When I retired, I got a piece of toilet paper and a piece of Kleenex and different pants. I'm like, oh. Yeah. Actually, I'd rather have that than that.
We're good. So does that clarify? As clear as mud now?
No, it's not clear, but we'll develop maybe some ideas about after talking with some other people.
Okay. We've got to vote. We did vote.
We did vote.
We did.
I want to adjourn.
All in
Alright.
favor, say aye. You didn't do that part of it.
What? All in favor?
Say aye.
Aye.
0, thank you. Next meeting date is June 2nd
Second
at 9.
at 9 a.m. Thank you very much.
Who wants to adjourn?
David? David?
Move to approve, or move to adjourn.
David?
Second. I'm from Charleston. And where? Oh, in Arlington?
All
Yeah.
right. And seconded by
Oh, I'm sorry, we gotta say,
all those in favor?
aye.
Aye.
I love West Virginia. It's a beautiful place. But yeah, that's why I laugh about the roads. I'm like, seriously?
Do I need to do
I'm coming around corners where you can't see anything on the other side of the corner. We call them. But, because.
So you're saying Albrecht said first.
See.